Hi, welcome to Kate's Kitchen. It's the day after a holiday. We had leftovers, and I'm taking you along on my way to use some of the leftovers. I had a big ham yesterday and served a lot of people, and now we had bones left over. So I took the bones and some of the skin and some of the fat and some of the meat, and I put it in a great big pan. And I cooked it very slowly overnight, and I came out with all this wonderful broth. Now I want to use the broth. What I'm thinking about doing is I'm going to put it with beans and ham and onions and can it. And I thought I'd take you along. Let me go through what I've done to this point. I've got everything set up for you so you can see everything we're doing. We start over in this corner. I have my can lifter that'll lift the bottle into the hot water and back out again. I have my vinegar and my wet paper towels. I have my jars. I have my filter. I've got the broth, a ladle, and in the back corner back there I have the canner. First off, these are pint jars. This jar has got 1/4 cup of onions down in the bottom, 2/3 cup of black beans, 1/2 cup of ham. We're going to put a teaspoon of non-iodized salt in each one of these jars. Drop our little teaspoonful of salt right on top of the beans and everything else that's in the jar. The beans always taste so much better when you've got some salt in them. There we go, almost done. And there's our salt. Now the next thing we're going to do, we're going to put our funnel in. Our broth has cooled down, so it's not hot. The jars are clean. They will be going through the pressure canner, and so that will sterilize them. I don't have the pressure canner heating up because everything right now is cold that's going to go in it. We just fill the jars up. Now, the beans that we have in there are going to absorb a lot of this liquid, perhaps all of the liquid. So we fill it right up to the neck of the jar, right where the first ring comes around. And we're going to fill up each one of them all the way up. Now these beans are dried. I have not soaked them overnight. They're just right out of the bag dry. When it's done, there may be some liquid left in it, but it's not going to be like a soup. It's just going to have a little bit of liquid in the bottom with the beans. I love a good bowl of beans, and to have a little extra meat in it using this ham is going to make it delicious. Now what I did to make this broth was I took all the bones out of the ham. I cut as much of the meat off of the bone as I could. Then I put the bone into this pan with enough water to cover it. And I added some onions and some garlic and several other things to the pan. And I put it on low, and I let it cook for several hours. After it cooked for several hours, I let it cool. And I pulled meat that was left and the gristle and all of that off the bones and the leftover things like that are what you saw when we opened the video. Those I'm going to take next door to my lovely neighbor who has a beautiful dog, a really sweet dog, and give it to her for the dog. Then I saved some of the ham meat that didn't get eaten yesterday. And I'm going to chop that all up and probably make some kind of a soup with that. But it's, one thing at a time. Right now we're trying to deal with the bones. Now I'm almost out of broth. I'm not going to have enough broth to fill up all 9 of these jars. And on the 2 jars that are not going to have broth, I'm going to use filtered water. And I'll cut up a little bit of carrot to go in the jar as well. That way, once they have been pressure canned, I'll know which jar had the broth and which jar had the water. There we go. Now, I take our paper towel and I dip it in some vinegar. Just to make sure I can make a real good seal, I'm going to wipe all around the edge and down onto the rings. Now you can check, and there is nothing there on the cloth, so we are getting it clean. But the reason you want to do this is if there's any oil or sugar or anything else on there that shouldn't be, you don't want it to get in the way of your jar's sealing. It might look like they have a seal, but that could cause the seal to fail and you don't want to make your family sick. Almost done with this part. Now we put the lids on each one. There we go. Then we put our canning ring on. The way we do that is we set it down, get all the threads lined up, and then run it around until you feel just a little resistance to the point where you can turn the jar. Then you hold on to it and you turn it down just a little more. You don't want it, whoops, that one got dirty. You don't want it too tight because you'll cause siphoning and problems like that. So you only go to what they call fingertip tight. And basically the way I interpret it is as tight as I can make it just using my fingertips. So there we are. Now see, it's turning. You turn it just a little bit. We're going to do that to each of these all the way through. And believe me, if you've canned as much as I have, you know what that feels like. And once you get used to it, it does not take nearly as much time. That one doesn't want to go down. I better get it for another ring. There we go. It's a good thing I had more than just the 9 lids for these that we're working on. You never know when you're going to need more than what you think you are, so I always get out extras. Okay, they're all got their lids on them. Now I'm going to lower them into the canner. The instructions from my all-American canner says that I should have between 2 and 3 inches of water in the bottom of this can. So I have put 3 inches of water into that canner. It's still cold, and I am going to bring you back when I have all the carrots in this one swapped out for a jar that's going to let me seal. I'll bring you back and let you go what's next. As you can see, I've added just a few carrots to the top of either of our jars. Now, since we ran out of the broth, I'm going to use some purified water. And we're just going to fill it right up to that rib, leaving 1 inch of headspace. There we are. We take our paper towel. This is a new paper towel, and we wet it down. Just to be certain, because I don't ever want to have a jar fail because I wasn't careful enough. There we go, wiped it down, put our lids on and our rings on. There we go. Now we're going to lower these into our canner. And as you can see, that's quite a full canner. It's not supposed to be touching each other, so we have to move them around a little bit. But there we go. Now that the canner's full, we're going to turn on the heat and we're going to watch until it starts to simmer. Once it's simmering, we'll put the lid on and we'll watch again until the steam starts venting. Now, one thing I need to tell you about this all-American canner is that unlike other pressure canners, this has a metal-to-metal seal. That means that all around this edge here will be in direct contact with the lid. There is no rubber gasket like so many of the other ones have. I have checked to be sure that this portion here, I have used coconut oil and oiled it. I have also done so on the inside of the lid. I have checked to be sure that the valve is open, that it's clear, so that when the steam comes out, it'll be, you can see it and it'll be clear. So, I'm going to turn on our heat and we'll watch until it simmers. Then we'll put the lid on and watch until the steam comes out. We'll let it vent with the steam for 10 minutes and then we'll put the weight on it, and when it settles in and gets to the right pressure, which from my altitude is 10 pounds, we will start the timer. Beans have to cook like meat. They have to cook in pints. You have to cook them for 75 minutes and in quarts for 90 minutes. So that's what we'll do, and I'll bring you back when they're cooked and they're ready to come out of the canner. The water in the canner is beginning to simmer. I brought you back a little early because I wanted to remind you that when you're doing canning, you always need to add a splash of vinegar to the water so that your hard water scum does not build up on the jars. Now we're going to put the lid on. We're going to wait for the steam to start coming out of the vent. Then we will time it for 10 minutes and put the weight on, and we're going to let it process for 75 minutes. I'll bring you back when everything's ready. It's a little over 2 hours from the last time I saw you. I allowed the tanner to come up to pressure. It cooked for 75 minutes and then it cooled down. We're going to open it up right now and take the jars out. So come with me. Here we go. Always lift the lid away from your face, just in case there's any steam left. There we go. Now, we take our jar lifters, we reach down inside. Ooh, that looks good. We have a canner full of black beans with ham and onions, and I can't wait to eat some. They're still bubbling inside, but I don't think I can show you because it's so dark. But as they cool down, there we go, this one you might be able to see. Can you see it bubbling in there? Right below here. There we go. I'm going to take them out and I'm going to put them in this area, this pan that has a pad in it. It's going to keep it warm but not hot, and it'll allow it to cool down naturally. And once they've cooled down for 24 hours, we'll take the rings off. We'll wash the jars to be sure there's nothing on them. Then we'll label them and they'll be ready to go into our pantry. Now one thing I'm going to do, which I haven't shown you before, it's something I do, but I always forgot to tell you before. When I first take them out, in order to allow them to cool down slowly, I just put a tea towel over the top. It doesn't really keep it real hot, but it does allow the temperature to cool down slowly. Tomorrow morning, when these are all cooled, I'll take off the ring, I'll wash the outside of the jar, I'll put a label on it, and I'll put it in my pantry, and we'll have these wonderful jars of black beans with ham and onions in it. And that was out of things that probably would have been thrown away from our meal. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something from it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe if you're not subscribed. Remember to click the little bell so that you get notices of every time I send out a new video. And we'll see you next time. Bye.